Hi, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. We're gonna wait maybe like an extra 2 minutes. Maybe there's gonna be more people joining us. You guys can hear me well?
Yes.
Thanks. All right, it's 8:01. I think we can start. Oh, we got 21 participants. That's pretty good. Nice. So welcome everyone. Welcome to this training tips session for preseason and beyond. Bienvenue tout le monde, bienvenue à cette saison avec des trucs pour l'entraînement, pour la pré-saison et plus encore. Donc, on a John Smith from Alberta and James Hyland from Ontario and myself, who will likely be presenting this session, all us three together. So we wanted to have a session about preseason training in order to, we thought it was the great timing first to have this type of session. And we think it's really important to share this with you. So feel free to ask any question. There's always going to be a little question time at the end of the session. So we'll likely get started. John, do you want to go ahead with the first slide? The next slide.
Yeah, of course. So why is activity important? And maybe a better phrase to use for activity is kind of movement practice. Movement practice, I think, denotes a little bit more of a lifelong process and set of habits, getting out, moving, and kind of being in the world. A couple of reasons that movement practice is important is you're going to have improved overall health, improved performance, certainly at sports, and almost guaranteed in other aspects of your life as well. Certainly injury prevention is one of the big reasons to train. And the other reason is to maximize fun, because the more fit and conditions we are, the longer we can stay out on the slopes enjoying snowboarding.
Is there anyone French in this session right now? Do you need me to translate every slide? If no one is writing or raising the hand, I won't do. No? Okay, good.
And again, so just expanding on that a little bit, why train for snowboarding? Good levels of general fitness will certainly keep you on the slopes a little bit longer, having a great time. You don't need to be like a world-class athlete to enjoy snowboarding and skiing. And it's all kind of dependent. Your fitness is really dependent on the type of snowboarding that you want to do. For instance, higher performance snowboarding is going to require higher levels of fitness. And then the better your fitness is, the more quality of repetitions you can get out there, and hopefully better learning. You guys know, all remember the old adage, practice makes perfect. Well, I've heard people correct that too, practice makes permanent. So if you're practicing good reps rather than not so good reps, that's just going to lead to better and better skill development over time, and kind of just working in that muscle memory and skill execution. The other reason it's important to train for snowboarding, as I'm sure many of you can attest, later on in the season, it's easy to get a little burnt out, feel a little dead and flat. So by training throughout the off season, we can make sure that we're staying strong and we're able to continue making improvements throughout the winter. If you are maybe someone who's a little bit more in the office and just kind of on the slopes on the weekends, it'll be especially important to make sure that you're doing that training just to make sure that you're maintaining fitness so that when you do hit the slopes, you're ready to go and you're not wasting any time out there. And then another reason, of course, to train for snowboarding is just improving your ability to move through the environment, through the world. You know, we don't just all live in our little hamster cages and run on our wheels. We need to be out in the world exploring and enjoying the natural surroundings. And that's really important, whether it's, you know, snowboarding, just going for a walk or a hike in nature, trail runs, cycling, anything that you do, that's really just helping you be prepared to achieve success in life.
James, do you want to keep going with this one?
Okay, so I guess a big part of what we wanted to lay out here was this is a really big subject, and there's lots of different ways to sort of tackle getting into training, whether you're currently training or whether you're thinking about getting into training, whether you're seasoned or, you know, what have you. So we wanted to highlight a couple of different ways to get into it so that it wasn't so cumbersome to take on, like, personally all yourself. So there is the self-guided approach, and this is going to be good for those of you that are familiar with training, specifically the movements and the elements that you want to give and have in your practice. So the self-guided approach certainly works if you have a fairly good foundation of movements that are going to get you to where you want to go. Online has become a pretty huge resource. Specifically, I know for myself, I run a bit of a training company on the side, and I had to be fully online for the last couple of years. But just throughout years of kind of moving across into different countries, I spent a lot of time over in Japan. I had clients that still wanted to train with me, and the only way to do it was online. So this is a great way to get in touch with people that you really want to train with that are maybe farther away, or you just want to touch base with somebody that's not near you. In-person trainer, I mean, that's kind of the gold standard, in my opinion. This is going to be great for training new aspects, getting into and taking yourself from maybe these plateaus and taking yourself to the next level, learning new things. As we all know, as snowboard instructors, that looking at somebody and having somebody look at us and giving us feedback on our movement patterns and all of this can be greatly beneficial. So it's hugely recommended, especially if you're getting into it. So if this is new to you, training for either a sport or just generally training in life, in-person training is going to be the gold standard for sure. And then what I do, which is a great way to go too, is a combination of all the above. So I set my parameters and I get myself going in the right direction, but I'm always going in to have somebody else look at my movements. If I'm trying to gain a little bit of muscle, that would be the time that I'm going to go talk to one of my friends who is a trainer, and we're going to set something up, program up that's going to be specific for like building muscle. And then again, I know a lot of trainers that are online that are great, and you can find a lot of great resources online. There's a huge amount of information out there. The good thing to do is find the stuff online and then perhaps filter it through either people that you know in person, because the online world can be, as we all know, a little bit dicey with information. So just be careful online.
Thanks, Jane. So, sorry, I had a little bit of a lag with the kids in the background, so sorry about that. Basic recommendations. So we're recommending activity. So that these are like, there's more recommendation, but these are the basic recommendation we decided to share with you tonight. So 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous physical activity. That's like general guidelines from CSEP, physical activities. Muscle strengthening activities that use major muscle groups at least twice a week. So something more on the musculation side. And guys, you jump in and add anything where you fill the gap, where you feel that you need to fill the gap. Sleep, 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep on a regular basis. We all know that like having a regular, consistent bedtime with schedule when you're going to bed and when you're waking up is really good for your performance quality. And sedentary behavior, we're recommending no more than 3 hours per day of recreational time. That's from this source. From my mom's side source, I would say it's less than 1 hour, but this is this is the recommendation. Breaking up long periods of sitting as often as possible. We all know, like probably some of you guys have office job, and we all know how hard it can be on the body. So I think it's so much important to, like I set myself some alarms every 20 minutes, half an hour, to not forget to stand up and to go at my stand-up desk, to do different places, just so it makes such a bigger difference. If I don't do it, I finish the day and I feel so stuck. And I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. So this is what we're recommending. Anything to add, my friend?
Yeah, so the CSEP is actually just the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiologists. So there are several different personal training and fitness certifications across Canada and the world. They all have their different advantages. This one is most directly paired with kind of universities, and to get the higher level, you actually have to go through like some pretty extensive physiology training. So anyway, that's their science-based recommendation for like minimum quality of life for like 18 to 60-year-olds. I might be a little off on that age, but this is like the basic recommendation, not even for performance. That's kind of where we need to be at.
That's the only thing I wanted to add, was that if you're not ticking these boxes, then there's, like, this is baseline. So get here. And if you're not, that's totally cool. Just get here. And then after you get here, you can start adding complexity and all the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about later.
And build on top of that. I think I talk about performance, but yeah. Thanks. Principle of training, general principle of training. I'll go with this one and you guys can fill the gap, okay? Rest and recovery, that's a general principle that you want to incorporate in your daily routine training or your weekly training. Rest is as important as training, and rest can be sleeping, but it can also be like a moderate activity or a more, how do we call it, like an active rest, right? That's how we call it. Reversibility. John, do you want to go on with this one?
This one's essentially, if you don't use it, you lose it. You can train and be super fit, and then it will eventually see diminishing returns. Some of that's based on just your overall training history, and some of it is a little bit genetic. But that's why it's always better to kind of just maintain your fitness. However, if you have previously gone through a phase where you have done lots of training in your life, and you do get back into the gym after a lapse, it does come back faster than someone who has never trained for their entire life. It's just your body kind of knows what to do. It just needs the refresher, and then eventually when it catches up, you'll start making those gains again.
I could speak to that. I was, for a lot of my 20s, 30s, well, until probably the last decade of my life, it was I was a yo-yo trainer. So I would hit huge bursts. I get super fit, and then I get super, I'm not going to say fat, but I drank too much beer and hung out a little bit too much. So, but when I got back, it was always like this. That being said, I'm just in my mid 40s now, and I want to maintain, because it is difficult to keep coming back and then keep coming back. So that idea of consistency that John said is key. So just keep, once you start going, even if it's just a little bit, just keep going.
diminishing returns. Do you want to say a little bit more about this? We got a graph here to.
Yeah. So essentially, apart from maybe like and this line I think is a little simplified. If you've never trained, your learning curve is actually going to be even more shallow and flat to begin with, and then eventually it'll kind of start and maybe reflect this line a little bit more. And then eventually you hit a point where you're really fit. And once you get really fit, similar as when you get really good on your snowboard, it's harder to make improvements and refine some things. Just because your physical capacities, like your physiology, is already working up as closer and closer to its potential. So then getting any really gains in there, you have to like carefully monitor all sorts of aspects of your training, that sort of thing, really get lifestyle, diet, and then even then how you tweak and manipulate the variables in your training program. You're still only going to get a certain amount of gains. And then eventually you get to a point where if you keep pushing and you burn yourself out, then we get those negative returns on the right hand side there. And if anyone's ever worked themselves to the point where they're burnt out, it is not fun. It is so hard to come back from that. It takes at least 2 weeks usually. And even then to get back to kind of your 90%, I would say probably about 4 weeks.
Yeah, long recovery time. Progressive overload. James, do you want to go with this one? Sorry, I keep
No, it's all good. So I think we can hit a couple of these together and just go, and basically what progressive overload is like, you don't want to go full out all the way right off the bat. You want to overload the system in I guess a systematic way. You don't want to just push right past where you'd be okay. So if you progressively overload, you're building tolerance, you're building strength slowly. Being specificity, all of these depend on the type of training that you're doing, right? So specificity to me, and I didn't write this slide, but for me means I could be targeting specific muscle groups. I could be targeting specific types of training. There's, I don't know, John could
so for this point's really whatever type of training you do, your body will adapt to that specific type. So for instance, if you are only doing like long distance cardio, cross country, jogging, your body will adapt to that. Or if you're only doing powerlifting or sprinting, your body will adapt to that. Now there is a little bit of crossover because the body, and we'll get to this later, it's a series of systems that are somewhat isolated yet also integrated. And that's why, following into that next point, variation is really key. Even if you say want to be a power lifter, you still need to do a variety of different exercises. And even if the movements are very similar, changing the loading as far as like your rep scheme, the weight that you put on, and even the tempo, so that's the speed that you do the lifts at, all of that variation is required to help you actually make improvements. Because eventually, without the variation, you hit those diminishing returns a little bit faster. And then the last one, individualization. Each person is unique and different. We have our own physiological, anatomical structures, and no two people are going to respond exactly to the same to any kind of set routine, schedule, loading. Like there's so many other factors that go into that. So you got to understand that each person is their own individual. And then just the last one there, James, do you want to expand on the environment?
Yeah, totally. Well, that speaks to exactly what you're talking about with variation, individualization. So context matters. So where you're going to do it. If you want to put more variation, it's not just, and I like to bring it outside of just a gym setting where it's very symmetrical, everything is kind of set, and take it into different environments and apply this just so that I have better variation. It's just a way to vary my exercise program.
Yeah, and you can do, like, for example, the same training with a different terrain. Like I'm training for running currently, and if I run on the flat, I train differently and I have a different result than if I run uphill and downhill as well. So, and I think it's good to alternate.
Or on the treadmill. Treadmill's good, rainy
Treadmill,
days, but
yeah.
if you only train on the
Yeah.
treadmill, you might experience more injuries when you finally try to go outside.
Yeah.
Anything to add on this slide? We're good. Measures of performance. So how do we measure performance and in our training? So including but not limited to endurance, strength, power, speed, agility, mobility, balance, etc. Different biological system contributes to various measures of performance, and these systems are separate but also integrated into one another. I'll let you guys expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, so we don't have to get into the weeds on like exercise physiology. I'd need to crack open my textbook since I studied some of that years ago. But essentially, there's a whole bunch of different biological systems that contribute to any one of those performance measures that are listed. Sometimes the scientists in the lab, they use one measure versus another. But when a coach is in the field watching what the athlete is doing, these measures here is kind of what the coach can see. That's when the rubber hits the road, these are the things that really matter in our performance. And yeah, there's certainly, as you kind of get into more and more of those, you can break those down a little bit more. Power, it's, for instance, is a combination of speed and force. So someone could be really powerful, like say a shot putter, but that shot putter is probably not going to have the same high jump as a high jump specific athlete, or as say a sprinter. They're both powerful, but they're powerful in different ways.
I think one of the reasons we even put this slide up here is that in order to understand and get better at something, you have to be able to measure it. So these are kind of the measurements that we can talk about and that you can see. I mean, you could certainly apply a lot of what you see up there to snowboarding. You know, endurance, strength, power, speed, agility, mobility, balance. All that shit is happening. And I like that analogy that that's what you can see that John said. Like, this is literally what I'm looking at when I'm looking at high-end snowboarding. I'm looking at how somebody moves and what kind of mobility they have. Is that affecting, you know, how they're balancing? Are they strong enough to push through this? Or it's just a neat way. And for yourself, you can put yourself and take specific metrics that maybe we'll talk about later, and then compare. You get the metric at the start, and then 2 weeks you take maybe another metric, the same metric, and you see, hey, am I getting better? Am I getting stronger? Is power increasing? So unless you test, you don't know if you're making progress. So these are just great metrics to be aware of.
And I think traditionally in fitness and performance, it was really thought like, oh, you can only work on one or two of these capacities at a time. But we're realizing, like, with the emergence of CrossFit kind of changing what humans do and how they work out, we realize that there's actually a lot of benefit, and we can kind of blend certain types of exercises to get really good benefits across all of these factors and these measures. But if you really wanted to make any specific improvements in one of those realms, you would adjust your training to get those specific adaptations. And it's good to incorporate, you know, like Jen was saying, those active rest days, Maybe on the active rest days, that's when you do your little bit of agility, mobility, balance, and that sort of stuff. So anyway, we'll get more into some possible recommendations. But the thing with all of this, and when it comes to like program design, is it really is a blend of art and science. Because like I said, every individual is different. And like really figuring out what they want to get out of their training and trying to make all those things align isn't always exact. There's not one formula you can apply to every single person. And you've got to kind of still be a little bit flexible in whatever plan that you put out there. So.
Yeah, and these are the one that if you're not sure about how to set these to measure these performance and to set the goals for yourself, that's really when we'll talk about it a little bit later, but that's really when you want to probably use the help of an expert, right, of a coach expert that can help you to define these general measure into a specific training. Right. And when you get good at it, it's easy to reassess yourself. But when you don't have a lot of training experience, you might want to need someone to help you to assess these, because these are the ones you want to reassess often in order to keep progressing in your training. So we talked a little bit about it through the previous slide, factors of program design. So
I'll take it away on this one if you'd like, Jen.
Okay, go ahead.
So factors of program design, and this is just some of them. Again, there's many others, and it gets, because there's many schools of thought and different training philosophies. But overall, we got the frequency. How often are you training? Intensity. How hard are you training? So that could be, say, like a measure of your heart rate, or just a rate of perceived exertion for some kind of like a cardio activity, or with weights, that could be the amount of weight that you're lifting, or how fast are you moving that weight. And then time refers to like kind of how long are you training. And I guess that could also vary a little bit with intensity, like are you getting rest periods in a given workout. And then type is how, like what methodology are you using to train? Are you lifting weights? Are you running, rowing, any number of those things. And beyond that, that's just kind of for kind of the broad strokes. As people get really into more and more planning, they can even think about different times of the season. Are they preseason, mid-season, going into a competition, just after a competition? And there's lots of other names people use to break down different training windows and that sort of thing. But it can get quite complicated. So we're going to save some of that information for another time, and just get into a little bit more practical information for you guys.
James, do you want to present this one?
Sure. So we kind of brainstormed and came up with the value for time kind of theory here is that resistance training circuits or intervals offer pretty big gains in multiple capacities within a reasonably short workout. So what that means is all of those factors that we just looked at when you're building a program, if you're adding these resistance training circuits in, you're tending to get a little bit more out of it, more bang for your buck. When we were talking about those metrics that we would measure and how there's the different biological systems and they're kind of integrated, but they're kind of separate. And John had mentioned, you know, if you want to get specific, maybe about power, then you have to go specifically with a type of training. But this is kind of a shotgun blast. So it's going to cover a lot of bases in a short amount of time. So the factors to this is using multiple joint movements. So it's not just a single bicep curl that you're doing. You're doing a movement that is going to be compounding. So you're using multiple joints, alternating pushes and pulls, upper and lower body, left and right side, prioritizing technique and safety. So that's probably one of the biggest things. So from somebody that has trained a bunch of people and is a CrossFit coach and trained a bunch of different types of modalities, I see more often than not, if people aren't careful when they get into this interval training and kind of pushing it, they let the technique go out the door, and that's when people get hurt. So make sure you're prioritizing technique. Mix core exercises for the rest, mix things up, and try something new. So that speaks to that law of diminishing returns. So if you're always doing the same workout with the same movements, you're going to get better, and then it's going to slowly kind of taper off, and then you'll probably get an overuse injury or something like that. Like I used to love doing a ton of pull-ups, and it kind of blew out my arm, my elbow for a little while. I wasn't able to even do a pull-up for a long time. So mixing things up is super key, especially for the body. You're just going to give it rest, and you don't want to get overuse. Types of workouts, an EMOM. So that means every minute on the minute, you would be doing a specific combination of movements, an AMRAP, Tabata, and then for time. There's lots of different ways that you can put these circuits together. So that's why it's kind of a pretty cool way to work out, because you can do body weight if you're new to it, but you can also do this stuff with kettlebells, sandbags, weights. You can get onto apparatus, pull-ups, all types of different. I mean, you look at a CrossFit gym and you see the variation in movements that they're doing. Those are very often one of these. And then they'll do specific skill development sets that are strength based and stuff like that. But you'll quite often see an EMOM go down or an AMRAP, and they're super awesome. I did one today. Made me almost puke.
Yeah, and AMRAP was, I think James mentioned EMOM, every minute on the minute, AMRAP, as many rounds as possible.
Basically burn yourself. They're nice.
Key movement. So these are some suggestions of key movements that you want to incorporate into your training, especially when we talk about getting ready for snowboarding. So squats, deadlift, lunge, plank, push-up, pull-ups, row, overhead press, rotation, lateral movement. Just keep in mind that for all of these movements, if you're gonna do them by yourself and trying to build your own training, it's really important that you know how to do them properly. And if you don't know, to get the advice of the right people, just to make sure you don't hurt yourself, because it can be easy, like people go, oh, I know how to do a deadlift, but you know how to really properly do a deadlift, right? So these little things can go a long way in order to prevent injury. Natural human movement can be looked at through these lenses, so run, swim, crawl, carry, lift, jump, climb. I'm sure, James, you want to expand a little bit on this one, because I know you're really big into this natural movement philosophy with.
Totally, yeah. I've found it, honestly, it speaks to, I guess, me, because I have always been adverse to going to the gym, like going into a gym setting. But I've always been a huge fan of being good at sport, being good at and strong. And I found some different schools of thought that kind of use, I guess, the way that we should be able to move as humans as kind of their base for training. So I went through a couple of different courses and instructions. And natural human movement, to me, like, these are the things that if I can't do and I can't do well, then I know where my weaknesses lay, right? So if I can't run a 5K in 20 minutes, I need to be better. If I can't swim a couple of kilometers, I need to be better. These are metrics that I've built up over time. Crawling, if you can't crawl on the ground effectively, then there's something missing. you literally learned how to do that first. So they're just, it's a lens that you can look through to sort of assess and figure out where you're at. And it's also a way to help you program. So if you crawl in a workout, if you carry and lift in a workout, and if you're able to jump and climb in a workout, then you've hit all of the stuff that you've seen up at the top there: squats, deadlifts, lunge, planks, push-ups. It's basically this, just layman's terms for all of that, essentially. That's it.
It's doing it out in the world.
It's doing it out in the world, right?
Who's trying to be the best at exercise? That's weird.
Exactly.
Got to do real sports.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just that bottom point. There's always tons of variation. There's so many different ones available for all those different movements, especially like the crawl movements. I'm always impressed with the number of unique things I see on the internet. But even say with squats, for example, you can do squats with a variety of different foot position. There will be one foot position, which is more optimal for yourself based on your hip anatomy and stuff. But you could do one, just a body weight squat, a goblet squat where you hold your weight in front of you. You could do a squat with the rack on your, or a barbell on your back, or the barbell in front of you, classic front squat. And they all have advantages. And they're good too. Sometimes that's just a great way of adding the variation in too. I find from those movements, for specifically for snowboarding, they're all really important. But front squats and deadlifts for me are like two really crucial ones, just to building that strength early season. And then all the other ones just help loosen all that out after I've had a big session.
100%. Those are great metrics for me as well. Like if I'm not able to be front squatting for one, if you can't do it properly, then there's mobility issues. You can work through that. And a deadlift for me is one of the best overall compound movements that you could possibly do for your entire body.
And for those of you who don't know what a deadlift is, that's essentially just picking something up off the ground. But it's using that whole lower body. You do use a hip hinge, you bend at the knees a little bit and just a little bit at the ankle. And yeah, you do need to lift with your back. Like you lift with your glutes, with your back, with everything. And by doing that progressive overload, hopefully we can get ourselves to a position where we're strong with that kind of movement, that kind of carry and lift.
Building your plan. First part of building a plan is definitely a self-assessment, right? Asking yourself the right question: where you are, what you want to achieve, what's your weakness, what's your strength, what's your training experience, are you an athlete? Have you been an athlete? All these questions. Were you pregnant last year? Are you planning to be? Stuff like that. Create a clear understanding of where you want to be. So I just covered it in the meantime. Really important in order to reach that goal, right? So where you want to be in 2 months, but also where you want to be maybe in 6 months or next year. When you build the training, it's good to think all these terms, so short terms, mid terms, and long terms. I think that's important also for motivation wise. Because it's easier to take a little step at the time, right? And
I just want, sorry, Jen, just before you go ahead, just with self-assessment, it's really important, especially when you're building a plan, particularly with the self-assessment, that you find, if you're not used to building a plan, get somebody to build it for you and learn how to build it. Because with the self-assessment, you want to take some specific metrics so that you can compare against them, like we were saying a little bit earlier. So whether it's a 5K run and how fast you can do it, or within reason, whether it's your deadlift, whether it's there's lots of different metrics that you can do, but you need to assess where you're at to know that you're getting somewhere, right? So for me, that's huge for self-assessment, is giving yourself a realistic, like, objective look. Hey, where am I at? Can I do this? Can I do 5 pull-ups? Can I do 10? Can I, figuring out some of those just so you have a general direction. If you see a weakness, then that's where you can build your plan, right? Like if you don't know, then you don't know where to go. That's it. Sorry.
No, that's good. Sorry, I was just answering some question in the chat. For those who are rating question in the chat, I'll make sure we cover them all at the end. Also, so include the dynamic warm-up with injury recovery. We haven't talked about this one, and I think it's important. Injury recovery is essential, so professional help as required, as just James mentioned, always important to prevent injury, but to recover from an injury. If you want to recover fast, I don't think we can recommend more than just going to see the right specialist for you, right? And the right specialist for you might be a different specialist than James will need, or than I would need, or than Judd would need, right? So it really depends on what you have as an injury and how you like to be treated as well, and how your body answers to the treatments. Include dynamic warm-up with mobility in your training. Of course, if you're going to see a professional, this should be part of your plan, but always important to warm up properly, just like when we go snowboarding, right? At the beginning of each of our session, all of your CASI trainers must tell you we're doing a little bit of a dynamic warm-up before we're really getting into things. Include flexibility moments separate from trainings to stretch out, ideally 3 hours after training. I would add here that a foam roller can become your best friend. Like myself during the season, if I don't foam roll at the end of every day, I feel stiff, and I use like the foam roll just get me started to do a little bit more stretching. And sometimes I don't have a lot of time to do a big stretching sessions, but 5 minutes is better than no stretching at all, right? So it's good to take more time, but what's important, I think, it's to do it on a regular basis. And ideally, we always say you do stretch 3 hours, minimum of 3 hours after training. You can do it before, but you have to be aware that you just did the training and your body is pretty warm. Maybe you want to add some stuff on there, guys, before good? Okay. HIIT training with weights 2 or 5 times a week. We talked about it a little bit earlier. It helps you gain a lot of muscular power very quickly. Not only muscular, but cardio as well. Consider other activities in your training. So you've probably heard a lot about cross training. I think it's a very popular term at the moment. So when you're building a plan, you want to assess everything that you're doing already in your daily life, in your plan, right? So for example, I climb, I kite, I run, I bike. So depending on how hard I've been in the session of my practice time, then I adjust my training to it, and I fit my training into the schedule, considering that I practice these other sports as well to address some areas that I want to improve. Empower yourself, very important, right? Challenge yourself, don't break yourself. So we spoke a lot about injury and push the limits, but where is the limit, and when to know when to stop, right? Consistency is key to make gain, obviously. Anything to add?
Yeah, just if you're feeling like nothing you're doing is giving you the energy you need to get through the workout, that's a definite sign that you need a break. I think we all kind of know some of the warning signs. We just don't always listen to them. But if you feel like you're really in a funk, and especially the other thing is mood, like if you're grumpy and more irritable, that's a #1 sign for sure that you need to take a break and get some rest in. But yeah, those are all great, good points. And consistency is key.
Easy win. So you see, I always drink drink 3 to 4 liters of water per day. So at the minimum, if you don't do it, well, try to get started on doing it. you'll feel the difference, especially if you're training a lot. You'll need it anyways, unless you're a real camel, which it's different from one person to the other. But yeah, develop healthy sleep habits, as we mentioned before. So we're repeating, but we can't. It's a good point to take in consideration. You know, often we like to go and we work the whole day and then we do something else, and I'm sure you guys all do that, and just okay, I'm gonna watch this series, and then you start binge watching, and then right. But if you do it once in a time, it's fine, exceptions, right? But if every night you're going to bed too late and then you feel very tired the next morning, that well, you got your sign that it might just be too late for you for the task that you have to do or the training you want to do the other day. Fuel for success: eat all food that's good for you. So we could talk about this one for a long time because this is a big topic, nutrition, right? And there's a lot of different philosophies existing out there, but it's important. So get some good information on it and eat the food that you think is good for you. And if you want to have more precise information on it, I'm sure you can find a lot out there and with specialists.
I think a general rule, though, is eat real food. I mean, nobody's going to argue with that. Over-processed food is garbage, period. There's no science, like, doesn't matter if you're vegan, meat, whatever, it doesn't. Eat real food. There you go.
You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah.
Move throughout the day, every day. So yeah, just try to get a good flow of movement throughout your whole day. Breathe light to breathe right. Nasal breathing. Maybe James, you want to speak a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, all of these for me are just they're like daily habits. If I'm not doing them, then I'm not going to perform well just generally in my life. So nasal breathing is certainly something that a large majority of people are probably not doing. It's an easy way to teach yourself to breathe efficiently. So it's just a cue. I mean, it is the best way to breathe up into a certain point of exercise. It's the most efficient, but I simply look at it as, you know, if I want to train, my philosophy for training is kind of, I just want to be doing little bits all day long, like move throughout the day, every day. Like that's my training philosophy. I'm just going to move throughout the day. My workouts are really short in terms of time, but if I'm breathing through my nose constantly throughout the day, if I'm lifting something heavy and I'm carrying it to my car and I notice I'm starting to breathe through my mouth, I go, no. Because it starts training. I'm not going to get super deep into the weeds about nasal breathing because we could have another, like, honestly, breath and breath work. You've probably seen it all over the internet right now. It is huge, and it's huge for a good reason. But it's nasal breathing is just like that first entry point into that sort of realm, and it's an easy win for efficiency.
It's free, it's low impact, and it makes dramatic improvements on your ability to perform.
Yeah.
And like James said, just the efficiency of our whole respiratory system way better if we breathe through the nose. And it should be long, slow breaths rather than like short hyperventilating breaths, like long and slow.
Longer on the out.
Start from the ground up. So start where at the level where you are. That's what you mean, right, guys?
Totally.
Yeah, and just build
It's
big foundations. Like, so for myself, having previously trained a bunch, I had a baby with my wife in the last couple of years. I've not had the same time to do maintenance on my own fitness, and then trying to get out and enjoy activities. My body's breaking down a little bit. So I'm actually taking that as a blessing that I kind of need to go back and I need to work on my foundations. I need to work on core strength. I need to work on shoulder stability. I need to work on mobility through my hips, and I know in my ankles and my feet as well. So just make sure you start with strong foundations. But like Jen said, you got to kind of know where you're at and kind of work from there.
Yeah,
So-
and respect this level. And respect the progression.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Oh, I just I literally I take that literally. I put that in there because for me, and that's a great way to look at it, and I totally agree with John. But for me, it's literally start on the ground. Like if you can't crawl, you can't walk. If we're talking about mobility and stuff. If you're sitting on the ground and you can't sit in a cross-legged position for a little while, then you know you have some work to do. So start by crawling, start by sitting on the ground and standing up. Start building your capacity, building your base from the ground, literally. That's one of the philosophies I've found most enlightening. I was always kind of a hard charger, like I just want to lift a bunch of weights, or I just want to go for the longest run, and I would like extreme everything. And then I got into this system that I'm currently a part of, and it was like, no, can you sit on the ground and get up on one leg? Then your mobility is shit, right? And I learned a lot just by going, okay, well, man, I need to really get better at getting off the ground. That is one of the single determining factors in death, is actually like life expectancy can be gauged literally on your ability to get off the fucking ground when you're down there. So excuse my language. Sorry, probably keep that a little more PG, but that it was a huge eye opener, and I had like some mobility issues back in the day, and it was a game changer when I started just going like easy movements on the ground, building the basics, exactly like John's saying, and all of that stuff happens. Like if you want to build a strong core, you can build the strongest core on the ground. Try to stand it, like crawl across your room on your hands and your feet. Try to go once across your room. You'll be like, oh my goodness. And then try to go back and forth. Like it's crazy. Anyways, I digress.
Just try to follow a baby of 1 or 2 years
Exactly.
old. Do the whole movement.
I did that when my daughter was born. I was like, because I heard about these NFL players that like tried to mimic babies in their movements, like move for move. And the NFL football players were done, toast within minutes. And these babies just go all day doing this shit. Like, it's like, wow, strength to weight is insane.
They can barely reach the top of their head though. So
True. They haven't got there yet.
my kid's got a really nice squat right now. It's good.
Oh yeah, man.
Full
That was an
depth.
awesome
It's great.
picture.
Impressive. Foam roller is a good investment. I've said it before. I say it again. If you don't foam roll, try it. I'm sure you're gonna love it. There's tons of tutorials on how to foam roll and where to get a foam roll. Use it in both. I use it in activation, but also in recuperation time, so rest time. Depending of the activity, if I have the time, I really like to use it in activation as well. I find it kind of, especially in the morning, it kind of get me moving, get my whole body warm up, just like if I went for a massage in the morning. That's how I feel. So in fact, talking about all these, being active is a way of living. So we encourage you to incorporate all of this principle in your life. A little can go a long way to improving performance, and embrace training because it's fun, and don't forget to rest well. These are the big principles to remember. We have the three of us work to show you a little bit of some sample of training that we're doing. I'll let James present his sample, then John, and then myself.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about. I really wanted this just to be up here as an example for somebody to take a look. A lot of if you're not super familiar with kettlebells, some of the stuff on there or weights, some of the stuff on there is not going to make sense. But it's easily Googleable. I wouldn't say the first workout is not where you start. So if you're not into training, you're not doing these movements, you're not familiar with it, that's not a good place to start. It's a little bit more of an advanced workout. But my second workout I put up there is something that I do especially getting ready for a snowboard season, is I do some breath work. So I practice nasal breathing, or I'll do a Wim Hof, or I'll do something just to get my cardiovascular system moving. I'll start doing some slow mobility work, like I was talking on the ground, moving around on the ground, get going, get warmed up off the ground. And then I just walk up Georgian Peaks. I'm in Ontario, so I'm in Collingwood. I walk up the mountain with a weighted vest on. And my entire time I'm focusing on nasal breathing. So if my pace ever gets to the point where I start to breathe through my nose, I just slow down a little bit and I focus on breathing through my nose. And that's kind of a little bit of a warm up as well. Then I'll run a 5K up there. And then I walk down, and my recovery is just breathing through the nose, breathe through the nose. And that's building, aerobic capacity. It's building strength. It's building lots of different things as I'm going. And then I do some slow mobility work at the bottom. That's it. It's a really easy one. It's low hanging fruit. You don't even need a weight vest. If you're not hiking, you just find something steep, walk up and down it, and then go for a short run. Easy.
Thanks, James. John.
So for my warm-ups or my exercise, I definitely use just a lot of variation. I'll kind of take inspiration from whatever I see on Instagram, or I listen to kind of my body and kind of go with something that I think is going to challenge me, but also kind of make some improvements in areas I feel I might have been neglecting. Or sometimes it's just based off of a movement that I haven't done in a while that I think is just going to be interesting. Anyway, I usually start with dynamic warm-up. I like to throw some music on in the morning and just dance around a little bit and move like nobody's watching. Normally it's just me, my wife, and the cat, so it's all good. But I find dancing is just a fun way. It makes me smile, start my session in a good mood. And it just reminds me I'm not just doing these movements just to move weights around. I'm doing these movements so that I can snowboard. Like I want to maintain at least a mental thought of some fluidity to my movement and grace. But then potentially 12 body weight squats, just 12 push-ups. And then like James was saying, just moving around the room, just kind of doing shuttles through the basement. I'll do walking lunges across and back the basement, high knees, depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes it's just walking and pulling the knee up, holding it for a second. Or if I'm feeling good and I know it's going to be a pretty intense workout, I'll kind of do it while like running with my feet hitting the ground really fast. Same thing with butt kicks. I adjust the speed depending on the workout. And then like side shuffle or karaoke, just anything that gets us moving side to side. A lot of times when we move, typically it's like front to back or up and down. And that side to side playing is a little neglected in a lot of training, especially at higher capacities. So it's good just to mix that stuff into your warm-ups. Banded walks. I'm sure you guys have seen those little rubber bands big rubber bands that physios will give you. You can strap them around your ankles and knees and just basically try and keep a little bit of tension in them. They do a really good job of getting the muscles you never knew you had firing. So those are good. Inchworm is just kind of a crawling type exercise that gets everything going. And then like Jen was saying, sometimes include a little bit of foam rolling and some shoulder warm-ups. Like I said, for myself, just kind of recurring, not necessarily shoulder injuries, but issues. I find it's really important for me to make sure that those are warmed up and stable, almost regardless of what I'm doing. Sample workout, and I just wanted to show like different rep schemes as far as like time and that sort of thing. So sample A would be every minute on the minute for 15 minutes. So that's going to be 5 rounds of these 3 exercises. I'm just going to do 12 deadlifts, 12 goblet squats, and 12 push-ups. Now that number is a little bit arbitrary. 12's probably maybe if I'm not feeling super fit, or I want to try a little bit heavier weights, or if I feel like I just kind of want to move, I might up that rep scheme to 20 reps per exercise. And then of course, that's going to give me a little bit less rest in there as well. Sample B, AMRAP, as many rounds as possible. And so for 20 minutes, this one would be a bit of a killer. You're going to hit at some point in there where you kind of naturally will have to take a little bit of a break and give yourself a push. Remember, pick yourself up off the floor, keep going a bit. But yeah, do 10 burpees, kettlebell swings, reverse lunges, and then say mountain climbers. So the mountain climbers are the one where you might kind of get to catch your breath a little bit, but also not because those the burpees are going to catch up with you really quick too. And then sample C would be 4 time. So just here is the reps, here's the sets, get this done as quick as you can. And so this one's not massive, but it's just super easy, and it's going to get some things moving for you. So again, deadlifts, clean. So a clean is picking something up off the ground and getting it onto your shoulders, and then an overhead press. So those 3 movements, I kind of combine those together because they kind of stack well off of one another, and they kind of all combine into just a nice workout. And then for bonus, depending on how I'm feeling or whatever else I got going on the day. Now, this is just an example. I might do 3 rounds of various different plank positions on the bottom. So those are all just trying to hit my core, build the abdominals, the trunks, everything in between, basically. Yeah, your shoulders down to your hips. Or sometimes I'll just do maybe just mobility, stretching, or more kind of shoulder prep and stability stuff. And then one thing I've certainly fallen off on it recently, but when I was coaching mountain biking in the summers, this was pretty much non-negotiable. I'd be doing 20 to 30 minutes foam rolling, stretching every night, just to make sure I was kind of loosening things off and just kind of flushing the system a little bit. Yeah, it's nice and simple. I like to try and use lots of variety in those kind of simple, no fuss, no muss, get it done kind of workouts.
Thanks, John. Makes me want to try both of your training. I won't read everything here. This is going to be accessible to also after, because the session is recorded, so you can access it from our YouTube channel as usual. But I have 2 training plans that I wanted to share with you tonight. I like to cardio, like I really like to run. This is I'm not just running because I'm training. I really like to run. It's kind of a good meditation for me. So when I don't have a lot of time and when I want to incorporate and increase my training, I do, well, I always do at the moment, a circuit training and a cardio training that is on the next slide. So the circuit training basic, it's like very short, a little bit in the same philosophy, a bit different. I use mainly my body weight for all of this. 3 rounds, 5 movement repetition, and I vary the movement that I choose. So from, I've suggested a bunch of movement down there with the legs, the upper body, the core, and more, some cover overall body, and I try to change. So let's say one day I do lunge, deadlifts, chin up, pull-ups, and some plank. Maybe the next day I'm just gonna do 1 leg squat, chair, high knees. I'm gonna work a little bit on my bicep and tricep, and cycling abs, for example. So I try to really vary. Sometimes I feel more powerful and I do like more than 3 rounds of 5 movements. 3 rounds is very the minimum. It depends on how hard I climbed the day before, for example. This is, so the big guidelines is choose 5 movements, alternate at each training. Each movement must be complete. Don't go too fast. That's often a common mistake that I see when for people like trying to just perform very, very fast, but not like it's okay to go fast as long as let's say the push-up is complete. Like if you do like half of a push-up, if you go fast, it ain't gonna do the same job than a full push-up fast, right? Rest 30 seconds between each series of movement. Sometimes I feel eager and I just rest 10 seconds. It really depends. So I really play with it. Start with low numbers of time set for each movement and adjust. So increase every 1 or 2 weeks. For example, I'm getting back. I had a little bit like John, I had a bit of a shoulder injury for the past year, and I'm getting back into chin up. So now I incorporate a series of chin up every day, and then I increase the number of chin up I do every week. So my series just get bigger and bigger, but on a very, very slow progression. Don't forget to warm up again. And if you're only doing the circuit training, do a dynamic warm up before. So anything that you can think of, like running on the spot if you're doing the training in the hotel room, for example. Minimum of four of these session every week that I recommend, but 6 is ideal. Sometimes I pair it up when I have more time. When I have 1 hour, I pair the 2 training together, or sometimes even in 35 minutes, I just go running and then I will stop and do squats and then keep running and stop and do push-up. I kind of like to mix and play with it. Cardio training, so I like to do at the minimum of 30-35 minutes. You can run or you can walk. Walk fast is also a good training if you don't like to run or if it's not good for you. So an example of running that I currently do, so warm up 10 to 15 minutes. You start slow, you make sure that you take the time you need to really warm up, and then some intervals. I warm up for the intervals, so I prepare my body to push the limit a little bit more. So I will go with, like, for example, 5 times 30 seconds runs at 85% of your maximum rhythm. I kind of like to go with how I feel. I know people go with watch and like their pulse, and it's all good, but I know my rhythm, my normal rhythm of running. So I go with my 85% of my max rhythm. And then you alternate with some recuperation pace. You can walk or you can just like run slower. And then interval for 15 minutes, then I play with the intervals. So I would go, for example, 5 times 2 minutes at 80% in alternance with 1 minute of rest. And then I play with these intervals. So sometimes I will go 5 times 3 minutes, or 4 times 4 minutes, or 3 times 8 minutes. These were 2 days ago, and it was pretty good. 3 times 8 minutes at the end, I was like, 80% at 8 minutes. It's a good interval. It really helps your recuperation, to increase your recuperation when you're running. So that's why I do it. And cool down, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, up to you, up to the time that you have. And yeah, so that's it. That's what I'm doing right now. And when I want to make it more difficult, I just go run uphill and downhill. So our training philosophies. I'll let you each say your training philosophies because it make more sense.
Okay. I'll make it quick. I could have, I mean, there's so many, it was hard for me actually to, like, narrow this down, but honestly, I've found that using my natural environment as a lever to enhance outcomes, whether it's mobility, whether it's better cardio, it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. Being better at it or proficient at it in your natural environment is just for me, it's where it's at. That's where I want to be good. I don't care if I'm good at sitting in a chair or walking on a flat floor. That's for me, it's been the biggest game changer. And I think, honestly, from what I've seen in friends and family and different people that I've trained, it is where everybody really wants to train anyways. So you can get a lot of good outcomes if you just get outside. That's it.
For me, practice fun sports that you love and sports that get you out of your comfort zone, ideally, if you can. I think it's really important in order to keep progressing always, mentally as well. And cross-train in between your sport practices. So organize trainings times that fit in your daily life schedule. So for example, I get up 1 hour earlier than the kids to do my training and to make sure that I do my training in, or sometimes I will do it later in the day. But the first thing that I do every week, and for me, this is really, that's what's been key since I'm a mom and I have less time, it's really to plan my week and to respect my plan. And I'm really strict on respecting my plan. So every Monday morning, that's the first thing that I do. I look at my work schedule, at my work calendar, and then I fit in all the green color in my calendar is all training. So I put like all my training slots in my calendar, and then I'm set for the week. I can start my week. That's how I deal with it. I think like organization is key, of course.
Nice. So for me, this is kind of something I thought about even years ago, and more applying to like snowboarding and training, but I think it applies to fitness as well. So train with intention. Just bring yourself to your session. Really try and pay attention to where you're at with your body, how you're feeling on that day, and give yourself to that session. Put your phone away. Get rid of the distractions and honor your time that you're bringing to that workout, because you deserve it. The other one, play with purpose. So hopefully we're doing all this training so that we can get out there in the world and do our sports and be better. When we play with purpose, it's not just I want to achieve this today, but actually do it like you love it. Get out there and enjoy yourself, and push. But also the element of play is just making sure that you're not always so analytical with everything that we're doing. Well, there's certainly, that's the intention side as well, is analyze and think about what we're doing. Play is just like enjoy, experiment, not, because of a scientific hypothesis, but experiment because you wonder what if. I want to try this. I want to try that. And when we can kind of include a little elements of play into our training, or into, say, like your foam rolling, you're going to get a lot more out of it. It's going to give you little elements of discovery that will give you breakthroughs in knowledge, application, any number of things. And then the final one, pretty self-explanatory, is push your limits. You got to really push yourself a little bit beyond your current capacities to make any improvements. And it's really, improvements in life are a series of really small failures. Like if you don't push yourself until you just fail, you're not going to be getting better. Now, you don't want to be pounding yourself into the ground all the time, but you need to occasionally kind of like, ooh, bit too much, and then we'll back it off and try again. Because whether you're looking to just push your physical capacities or your ability out there on the snowboard, I find that's the one thing that for me is always continually rewarding as well. And even if it's not my all-time limits, even if it's just my limits for where I'm currently at, it feels good.
Thanks. Conclusion. So just good luck with your own training and enjoy the training. Stay humble. Stay humble means like stay where you are and respect your progression. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, or if you want us to direct you to the right people, maybe. And yes, sweat, lift weights, stretch, rest, and repeat again. Thanks for taking part into this session. That's really good to see the attendance, and stay tuned for our next session. Take advantage of these sessions. I think we have a lot to share, and we're going to try to keep doing them on a regular basis. So don't hesitate to send some subject to us that you would like us to treat. It would be a pleasure.
Someone asked about front squats earlier. Front squats, they do work slightly different muscles. They will work the quads a little bit more and a little bit more in the upper back, the shoulders, and even like the front of the shoulders from holding the weight up. I find for a lot of people, front squats help correct potentially a lot of bad habits, especially people that are new to training. If you're trying to do maximum strength gains, back squats are definitely superior with the barbell on your back for sure. But yeah, there's other nuances and different muscles that they use. I just like front squat as kind of a corrective exercise as well.
Amazing for shoulders too, like mobility to actually get it into a proper rack. Anyway.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate
right,
it.
thanks,
If you got
everyone.
any questions, yeah, get in touch.
See ya.
Bye. Take care. Question in the chat.